He took them from me! It's Silent Night meets Boogie Nights in this 2023 Christmas B-movie horror film directed by James Dean. And this one you've got a few recognisable B-movie personalities. Felicia Rose turns up for a small role. Jessa Flux, along with a few other kind of screen queen types and possibly a few adult performers. And that is the name of the game with this one. So the story features the sets of a adult movie, a XXX movie, as they are wanting to make this feature-length film, adult film, with a Christmas theme, and the director wants to do some type of proper narrative with the story and things like this. So we have the cast and crew of this movie in this house over Christmas, making this kind of particular type of film. And then about halfway through the movie, Santa Claus comes out and decides he's going to kill everyone. And the second half of the film is the massacre. And you kind of learn the reasons why he might be doing this. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about it, what works in this movie's favour. So this is a low budget movie. What does work? Okay. It's a strange film. Now, the first, probably more than half the film, is actually not horror at all. And it's kind of like the cast and crew behind the scenes almost making this pornographic movie. And it isn't itself a pornographic movie, and it's just a B movie. There's plenty of boobs and stuff in it. But it's a little. This is why I say it's a little bit like Boogie Nights, because it's kind of like how the sausage is made, if you excuse the pun. It is a sort of, behind the scenes, looking at the, the performers in there, and just how they are kind of interacting. And I have to say, I thought this was actually the strongest part of the movie, because even though I wouldn't exactly call it high drama, I actually thought their kind of matter-of-fact way of kind of talking with another, and how they kind of are just sort of friends and just sitting around talking and dealing with the director and, objecting to certain sort of things in the script and stuff like that, and how they are, we do this scene with this guy, and like how they just kind of talk and stuff. Do you know what? I actually thought it seemed even a little bit sophisticated at times. Just the sort of the way this, like the kind of the workings of how an adult film might be made, and how these kind of people involved would probably be in real life to a degree. And just kind of almost matter of fact, they just sort of take doing this kind of type of work and stuff like that. And I've got to say, again, it's in the vein of Boogie Nights. Obviously, it's considered to be a smaller budget movie. I'm not saying it's to the degree of that movie, but I've got to say, in parts, I thought it was relatively kind of well done. And for the most part, these are actors and actresses who don't do a lot of, let's call it, dramatic roles. But the first, I would say, 55% of the movie, maybe 60%, is this, and they didn't do a bad job in some scenes, and pretty for the most scenes, I would say. No one's here is going to get an Oscar, but for a kind of a low budget B movie, I actually thought, in a way, I mean, it's kind of played with comedic effect. It's not like a kind of straight drama in these scenes, but I got to say, I actually thought it was somewhat compelling. In a sort of narrative sense. I thought, okay, this is kind of. You kind of get to know the characters and the sort of personalities and stuff, and they're a little bit over the top and stuff, but they're kind of grounded enough where you sort of, you kind of go along with it. And it's just interesting to kind of watch these individuals sort of, and how they operate, and how just sort of, they just sit around in kind of like half naked and then just talk about other things and stuff. I thought it was, it's kind of interesting. Then we kind of get to the second half of the movie where Santa turns up, and I've got to say, he just seems just going to turn up. Now, we do get an explanation. I'm not 100% satisfied that it, it could have been a little bit more fleshed out. And it kind of goes on this kind of low budget sort of rampage. And, there is some kind of low budget gore effects and things like that. Some of them are quite fun, and he's kind of doing these Christmas puns and all the rest of it, and using candy canes to kill people and stuff. So there's sort of Christmas themed deaths, and as I say, a little bit of practical gore. It's kind of played more. It almost feels like these sequences are kind of played a little bit more for laughs. And of course, you've got tons of naked women in this movie, it's if you like plenty of TNA. There's this is practically like nearly all of the sort of female cast to get their kit off on one stage or another. And when we do get the reveal about the reasons why Santa is doing this, I thought, you know what? I kind of quite like the reveal, actually. It's kind of funny, but almost sad at the same time. And, it kind of sort of made sense to a degree. So we transitions to what doesn't work. Now, this movie is not trying to be some great narrative. But I think the reason that is given to Santa Claus for doing this, I can kind of understand why he might have a beef with one particular, possibly two individuals. But I didn't really feel it, based on what the film tells us and shows us, why he does a more widespread massacre to a degree. It felt like that needed to be fleshed out more. He needed to show that this is something, what's happened has driven him insane, and he now has this kind of unsatiable bloodshed or something like that. As it stands at the moment, again, I'm not saying this is like some, great narrative or anything like that, but what we do get, you can kind of understand to a point the motivation for this film, but I think, it kind of had needed a little bit more to it, to a degree. Now, that might sound like I'm criticising a Christmas horror film about porn movies in regards to character motivation. It sounds ridiculous when I'm kind of talking about it, but yeah, for me, just to be a better film, I just think it kind of needed to have a little bit more, with the Santa character showing maybe his descent to madness and how he's going way beyond the power of what he actually feels he has to. How he's introduced. Now, I get that they're trying to save a reveal towards the end of the movie, but it just feels so random. It feels so random that it almost feels a little bit discombobulated when you're kind of watching it, and you're thinking, why? Now, again, this is because they're trying to save a reveal until later on, but even so, it kind of makes the film seem a little bit poorly put together in some respects. I have to say, we spend a long time with the characters in the first, probably just about more than half the movie, going through the kind of the characters and things like this and their relationships. And I actually could have quite liked those elements, like I say, but I don't think it really needed, for the film that it ends up being, it didn't really need to have this much sort of scenes like that, because the movie is not really a drama. It's not trying to be a movie about the adult film industry and have these kind of insights about how these kind of individuals are acting behind the scenes and their relationships. It's not trying to be a drama like that. But these sequences, although I think they're quite effective, they feel sort of a bit too long for a movie where it ends up being a slasher film. And I think the movie needed to have, either go one way or the other. Either make this movie about the kind of the inner workings of the adult industry without any kind of horror, and you could have had like a B-movie version of Boogie Nights, or have a movie which goes into more of the the horror elements, because when it happens, you've spent so long with these characters without any type of horror happening. It kind of feels like it's coming out of nowhere, and you're almost wondering. When I was watching this, I'm thinking, I thought this was meant to be a horror movie, and you know, it's over halfway. There's not the barest hint of any kind of horror in it. So, like the Santa character, for example, he has kind of umbrage with porn, and maybe he's like, I don't know, just destroying adult shops or something like that. Or again, we kind of need I felt a little bit more of a build up with it to a degree, or have it things introduced a little earlier, maybe a smaller skirmish or something like that. But yeah, it just kind of feels a little bit pieces don't quite fit together. Now, again, what I'm going to say next is a low budget movie. I appreciate there are limitations and kind of budgetary restraints here, but the movie feels somewhat shoddily put together on a kind of a technical level. There's times here where people are kind of standing around and they don't really feel like they know what they're supposed to be doing. They're kind of looking awkward, sort of like haven't been really given a particular kind of good direction. There are times scenes just feel like they have been, you know, too long, and they needed to have had an edit to have it a bit more of a shorter, punchier scene. The tone kind of like is a little bit sort of inconsistent as the film goes on. Like I said, it always has a kind of tongue-in-cheek element to it, and in the first half of the movie, you know, it's kind of to a point, but it's the characters are grounded enough where you sort of buy into it. But then we get like Felicia Rose's character turn up with some other people, and they seem massively over the top, and don't quite fit, I would say, the other characters and things like this. And there's just a few like rough edits in this movie. Some of the sort of the effects are obviously on the kind of the cheaper side. So as a story, there was more to be done with it. I think it could have had a more going on earlier on, a little bit more kind of fleshed out in regards to the kind of the Santa character. There's some interesting things done here, like how he gets almost like in a daze when he's eating cookies, and it's almost like, again, more could be made with that. You know, this is his weakness. He gets kind of like how you can defeat him. You can kind of put cookies out and it will lead him away and things like that. Or there's one part where he gets stabbed through the chest but doesn't seem to hurt him, but then he gets stabbed through the hand that does hurt him. So again, it's not quite thought through in many ways. But overall, it's not trying to be a serious movie, and it's not trying to have a movie which I think has thought about all of the inconsistencies. It's meant to be a B-movie kind of horror porn sort of style schlockfest at the end of the day. So some of the critiques might seem a little sort of highbrow for a movie which is clearly not trying to be highbrow. But overall, you know, it's a flawed film. I think it could have been more interesting. It could have been a better paced in a way, because let's say some of the sort of the choices here seem a little odd. But it's not a bad film at the end of the day. It's kind of sort of somewhere in between. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. It's kind of watchable. Certainly if you enjoy a lot of these kind of like Scream Queens, you'll enjoy this. Yeah, so it's a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What were your thoughts? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.